But when I used to say Zionism, I meant to blame everything the Israeli government did on each and every Jew, even if they had nothing to do with the Israeli government. When I meant Zionism, I meant a global conspiracy that all our governments are connected to. And you will hear that I did not in any way present Jews as another evil. It's not like there are many forms of evil and Jews were one of those evils. No. In the form of anti-Semitism that I had, that I was suffering from, Jews were the evil on this planet. That's what we were raised with in the year 2012. When I was still a fundamentalist, extremist, and an anti-Semite. And I was an anti-Semite not because of politics, but because of religious training, because of ideology. I felt that it was what God wanted me to be. And I would campaign and lecture throughout Australia and Canada, mainly Ottawa, until 2012, in the same manner, blaming everything evil on Jews. But how did I change? Many people deserve credit. A Jewish man was once kind to me when my vehicle broke down on the Hume Highway in Melbourne, and he dressed in a way that was that I could identify him as a Jewish man. His name was Norman. He helped me on that night. That was the first ever time that I came in contact face to face with a Jewish man. In 2014-15, when ISIS took over parts of Iraq and my uncle Faris was killed, I decided to speak out against extremists. But I was still an anti-Semite. I'm just against ISIS at this point. But I believed that ISIS was an Israeli invention. When I began criticizing the extremists, I found myself in the middle of serious pushback. All of a sudden, I was classified as an Islamophobe. Oh, that's right, ISIS are Muslim. So how do we deal with this problem? The only organization that publicly supported me in my campaign against ISIS sympathizers in Australia was the Australian Jewish Association. Why? Because they have history. They know exactly what's going on. They know the games being played by the media and the politicians and the police. 7 decades is a lot of time. So they stood by me. Then came an invitation to join a gala. Guess where? Chabad, Sydney. Chabad rabbis see me in there, and they're like, this is going to be, I don't know what they were thinking, but they decided to change me as a person that very night. I walk in there at 7 p.m. I leave the event at around 9:30, and the rabbi it won't stop texting me until 2 a.m. I'm praying for you, don't forget. And it was the manners and ethics of Chabad Sydney that didn't make me who I am today, but they made me stop hating Jews. And they took me out of that bubble of skepticism. I stopped justifying everything that the extremists did against Israelis. I started to see Jews as equals. A rabbi, when he speaks, I'm a cleric, he's a cleric. The reasoning, the rationality, how they formulate their arguments. I begin to see myself sitting in front of a teacher who deserves respect, who is not empty, who has history, and who can prove it. And a matter of fact, the rabbis would speak to me in a way, and I would realize that this is exactly what Islam wants. Monotheism, the respect of all prophets. These people are not pigs. They're not monkeys. They don't have tails. This nonsense that we were raised with. Then I traveled to New York for a visit. And I met a wonderful rabbi, Rabbi Eli Abadi, who is now the senior rabbi in the UAE. Rabbi Abadi had great impact on me. Why? Because he spoke Arabic and he understood our culture. Many factors. Then comes the Jewish community in Canada, the Canadian Coalition Against Terror. When I started to meet with victims of terrorism, I began to realize the damage terrorism does. And slowly, I changed as a person. But when I did change, I did one thing that I regret. I went back to all of my videos and archives and I deleted them all. I did not want to be that old person ever again. But one day I'm going through my desktop and I find this lecture, and something in my gut tells me, yes, you're ashamed. Yes, you've changed. Yes, that is the old you, but don't delete it. One day you can show people how you were and what happened to you today. And that could give people hope that someone can shift from that to this. We were trained to speak. Imams and clerics are trained to speak, and we're trained to speak in a way that is convincing. This is why the Iranian regime hates me. They spent on me and they invested in me, and now I'm doing the same against them. We were trained to speak in a certain way that in 10-15 minutes, we can turn a vulnerable Muslim youth mind to becoming whatever we wanted them to become. And you'll find many incidents in history, not 2015. Here's an incident. Farhad Chabad, a 14-year-old in Australia, attended 2 Friday sermons, picked up a gun and went and shot a police officer called Curtis Cheng. 45 minutes each session. All it took was 2 sermons. Now, thank God we were not like that. But when I used to say Zionism, I meant to blame everything the Israeli government did on each and every Jew, even if they had nothing to do with the Israeli government. When I meant Zionism, I meant a global conspiracy that all our governments are connected to. And you will hear that I did not in any way present Jews as another evil. It's not like there are many forms of evil and Jews were one of those evils. No. In the form of anti-Semitism that I had, and that I was suffering from, Jews were the evil on this planet. That's what we were raised with. This form of anti-Semitism was extremely dangerous. Why? Because it comes in a religious context. There's a political context, there's a humanitarian context, but this is religious. This means you're against God and God's against you, and in order for me to make it to heaven, I have to side with God and against you. This form of anti-Semitism is what people have in their minds when they go out and blow themselves. It's this form of anti-Semitism. Well, I thank God that I developed as a person and as a human being. The last few years, we've been combating the same hatred that we used to preach. And why we do it best is because we know exactly what can demolish these arguments. This and its likes. From here onwards in this speech, I really want you to pay attention and take your phones out and take notes. Make points if you like. I'm going to be giving you some verses, just numbers. When you leave from here today, you'll be able to walk out a proud Jew who has in their toolbox the answers they need to demolish any Islamist argument against the Jews and their homeland. I saw Jewish people were being targeted by extremist Muslims, but the responses were totally different from what the Islamist is pleading and what the Islamist is arguing. When he comes into a room and says, "You Jewish occupier," how do you respond to that? You say, "Oh, but the Oslo Declaration and the borders, and you were offered many opportunities to set up a state and you decided not to." You talk like that. That's the basic, taking out the facts. An Arab says, "Occupied what? This is our land. This is Arabia. Next to it is Judea. Where did you Palestinians come from? The Romans or the Turks? What are you talking about?" See, here's a difference. And when they respond, we say, "Why are you insulting the people who fed you for 7 decades? It changes. The argument changes. How you respond doesn't mean you're responding to the person who said what he said to you. Whenever you are faced with an anti-Semitic attack, always remember that your response has to be to the people listening. Because if you fail to change the person you're speaking to, you have to make sure that they do not convince the listeners. The response needs to take into account who's listening. So I now have a mission of making sure that the Islamists do not have an argument that passes by as fact, because it's not fact. In the beginning, we must condemn the attacks that have been happening in Israel against Jewish people and the support that is forward in the West by the sympathizers of these terrorists. Whenever the idea of Jews and Jewish existence and Jewish homeland is presented, all Jews, and this is my advice, take it from me, stop and say, hang on, what context are you talking in? When you say Israel and the Palestinians, what context before we proceed? You're looking at it from a humanitarian context, from a political context, from a religious context. Pick a single subject and then I'll engage with you. Because what they do is this. Part of anti-Semitism is that you can never really grasp a single thing they say. They'll come to you with baby killer. Boom, that's humanitarian. Then they say you stole land. What is that? That's political, right? Then they'll come up with, you're going to hide behind trees one day, as though they haven't heard of the Iron Dome. The religious arguments come next. Firstly is for you to understand, how do you respond? If it's a humanitarian issue, take a look at how many people die when Hamas fires rockets and those rockets do not land anywhere but Gaza. If your argument is humanitarian, let's look at both sides. They'll run away from both sides because they know what Hamas does to the Palestinians. If you say your argument is political, then let's talk politics. You'll find out that the Palestinian rulers, the Arabs in general, the entire Muslim society was heading to a direction where they knew that the Palestinians were wrong, that Hamas was a terrorist entity, but they fueled this anti-Semitism regardless. And now the same politics in the same countries, the Abraham Accords. Who would believe it? In 2018, when I would say, there will come a day, believe you me, this is politics, there will come a day where these rulers will normalize relations with Israel. They will accept you as a neighbor. People looked at me as though I'm crazy, I'm doing lip service, selling you empty hope. Yet see how fast it happened. And it will expand and grow. These are the same people who sided with the Jew killers are now siding with the Israelis and with the Jews. Then you have the religious argument. The same muftis who would curse Jews in Mecca on microphone are now refraining from doing so. And they're banning any association with the extremists. Canada has not banned the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas from operating here under different incorporations, but the UAE has, Saudi Arabia has, Bahrain has. How on earth do you explain to the Canadian government that what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? You're waiting for another Canadian version of Ilhan Omar here? What are you waiting for? Here are the arguments I want you to have ready on hand. Put it in a notes on your phone. Whenever you are faced with an extremist, you have a response for everything. Why? Because your only source is the Holy Quran. You don't need to worry about anything else. Your only source to defeating Islamist anti-Semitism is the Holy Quran. End of story. When a Muslim extremist comes to you and says, but you Jews have no land. You have no land, you came from Europe. You say, hang on, why are you ignoring your Lord? International law means nothing to you. I mean, it organizes your life on a day-to-day basis. But the ultimate law is God's word. Note this down, chapter 5, verses 20. Chapter 5 being Al-Ma'idah, verse 20 onwards. You know what this is? This is something every Jew should have handy. This is your land title. In these verses, God Almighty tells the Jews and their prophet Moses, take your people and go to Jerusalem and never leave it. You're not allowed to leave. That's what I've assigned for you. It's written for you. Who says? God says so. And what do the Jews say? The Jews say the same thing. The Jews are not telling us that we want Mecca and Medina. They want what God gave them. Chapter 5, 20 onwards. Then comes the argument of, but Jews were exiled. How do you respond to that? When yes, Jews say Jews were exiled. The response to that, my friends, is that only those Jews, that's what the Quran says, only those Jews who refused to enter the land, they were exiled. For how long? 40 years. It's been well over 40 years since Moses was around. but you're living in the past. These verses 520 onwards is everything you need moving forward. It proves your land title. Once you prove your land title, all the nonsense begins to fade away. Then comes the personal attacks. Now they've left the land. You've established, see, your book says my land is here. Then come the personal attacks. But you are the children of apes and pigs. This is where you have to become an Imam Tawhidi. Bit of humor and say, oh, so you believe in evolution now. So you're no longer believing that God created us the way he did, but we evolve now. Are we really now following Darwin now? This is when they realize that their entire foundation is not only weak, it's ridiculous to mention. It's either that the Jews that we have today evolved from apes, or so go follow Darwin, go Imam Darwin, and go pray behind him and his school of thought. Why isn't he not a saint? Or the Jews were never pigs or turned into pigs and monkeys. Pick one. Pick one. And so on and so forth. The solution to anti-Semitism in society is number one. Jews need to understand that this is a Jewish challenge. I am more than willing and happy, like many of my Muslim brothers, we're more than willing and happy to side with you at any time. But the force has to come from you. And that can only happen if you're united. One, unity. Secondly, be careful with who you associate yourself with from the Muslim world. Just because a Muslim says something right, it does not mean that the Jewish people should rally around them. A Miss Universe, an Instagram model. Why? Because this problem can only be solved by clerics. Islamist anti-Semitism from the inside of the Muslim world can only be solved by clerics because it came from clerics. It came with fatwas. But the general Muslim population, even the skeptics, who are 50 on your side, 50 on the Islamist side, see that the Jewish people are now platforming figures that violate Islamic law. Let's not go too deep. Publicly. They'll say, you know what? I'd rather stay with the religious fanatics than with the, for example, models and so on. And there's nothing wrong with being a model. But it's just how you present your cause is very important, because your ultimate goal is people who live in the Middle East, people who live around Mecca and Medina. The more you present yourself as the authentic Jewish follower of Jewish law, follower of the Jewish religion that Muhammad respected and the Jewish prophets, the more influence you will have on the religious, because you need religious people to side with you. This is the end goal. You need allies that stand with you. The Global Imams Council, 1,350 plus imams. I was a regular member. I said to myself, I'm going to run in this election for vice president. Let's see what happens. If I lose, I've got nothing to lose. I still have my platforms and I still have my invites and nothing will happen. But if I win, here is where the game begins. And so I decided to run in the election, and my policies were very clear. I hid nothing from them. Number one, the Jewish people. We need to sort this problem out. This anti-Semitism that comes from the Muslim world and corrupt clerics, we need to go after the corrupt clerics. But I packaged it as the interfaith policy. Be good with everyone, Jews included. And then I had my other arguments about extremism, terrorism, and so on. And guess what? I won. Thank you. This happened January 25. Now comes talking about the future. Okay, now we understood what anti-Semitism is. You explained to us how we can combat it with the good points. You told us about yourself. Moving forward, what do we do? The real solution is not the Abraham Accords, because the Abraham Accord is political. And as you all know what the saying is, politics is dirty. It's so dirty that you can even normalize relations with Israel. That's the Islamist argument. Moving forward, we need the religious approval of the Abraham Accords. You need the Imams to come forward and say, siding with my Jewish neighbor is not a violation of my religion and does not anger my Lord. That's exactly what you need. So the Global Imams Council is currently preparing delegations throughout the Middle East to give credibility to the Abraham Accords and to call on for more Muslim countries to join. Yes, it's primarily focused on trade and tourism, but guess what? A society with imams backing such initiatives will change. Can it really change? Yes. Look at the UAE, look at Bahrain. They embraced Jews and the Jewish homeland without changing a single verse in the Quran. Not a single hadith was banned. Not a single mosque was shut down. All what happened was the society trusted the rulers. The rulers of the UAE took a country, turned it from a desert into heaven. Why are they not going to trust them one more time? Yes, there was opposition, and there still is, even from the ruling class. There's a lot of opposition towards the Abraham Accords. But how do we solidify this bridge that is now being built? We solidify it with religious clerics coming forward. And that's what we're doing in the Global Imams Council. Because if you don't solidify it with religion, a future ruler can come and reverse all the good efforts. But if society has changed, then it becomes part of society to accept Jews, to love them. Not tolerance. I don't like the word tolerance. Yeah, I tolerate you. No, I accept you for who you are. I respect you because you are human. You're my equal. I love you because you are human and I love the humanity in you. I don't like the word tolerance. There's nothing to tolerate. Thank you. I'm going to leave you with an advice. And it's an advice that I personally believe works. When presenting yourself in society, especially in the future, well, hopefully our people and your people, we live in total peace. Focus on what is common. Believe you me, you don't need rocket science. Focus on what is common. Focus on your love and our love for God and the importance for love for life. We're a people that have been nurtured and raised to believe that life is horrible and that the end target and the main goal should be the afterlife. Focus on these two things and you will win many allies. The common religious beliefs and the love for life. I have a message for the respected dignitaries and politicians and members who are here and who will listen to this and those who I meet with. The problem with you, and I say this as a friend, the problem with you is that you think in 4-year and 8-year terms. You think from the start of a office term till the end of it. And in these 4 years, you wonder, what can you get done? Because you've only got 4 years. Sometimes president or prime minister, they'll think in 8-year terms. Maybe I have another shot at it. The Islamist extremist does not think in 4-year or 8-year terms. They think 100 years from now, 200 years from now. This threat is very real. Let me tell you why. The Nazis of Germany denazified. There were many programs put in place. Germany turned into a democracy. The Nazis of the Islamist world never denazified. They never changed. In fact, they found a way to disguise themselves. The Muslim Brotherhood Charter, which Hamas is, by the way, the military wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, their charter calls for a global caliphate. Their logo is planet Earth with the Islamic Caliphate flag stabbed inside it. That's their logo with 2 swords. My God. Those people can show up in Gucci and Armani, right? When you think Islamic terrorist extremist, you think Osama bin Laden type beard, messy, look like a broomstick, right? They stink, their teeth are all messed up, messy, angry with the world, angry with this planet. And you're like, yeah, this guy I need to be careful from. But today, no. They come to you with the latest nice Rolex, cufflinks. What do you want? I want to express myself. Okay, yeah, come. And I'm sorry, but I love you. White people, there's a problem here. Yeah, we went to their countries and we destroyed their countries, so they're here to express themselves. Come, please express yourself. And what does he say? The Jews, they oppress us. I mean, they don't say it this way, but that's exactly what they're saying. Took our land, took this, took that, blame everything on the Jews. The level of anti-Semitism that we see today in Canada, is no less than the level of anti-Semitism that exists in the worst areas in the Middle East. You have people in government, without mentioning names, the audacity to blame Jews for killing a journalist before an investigation has even begun. Just like that, Israel is to blame. Yeah, Israel is a nationality, but what does the Islamic extremist, what does the Canadian Muslim understand? Jews, that's what they hear when they hear Israelis, they hear Jews. When a member of government says that and points the finger at one direction, they're impacting the national security of this country. They're basically putting a target behind the back of every single Jew that you're responsible for killing a journalist. And that is a lie. There's a video of them saying someone's down, they shot him. They shot her thinking she was an Israeli. And today, I made a tweet, it was the only tweet I made today, where the Middle East Eye posted the picture of the young Palestinian boy who was killed for being a terrorist, and they cropped out the image of him holding a gun. And they used a very old image of him when he was a young boy. Hamas issued a statement with a poster of him holding an actual machine gun, saying he's a martyr. I don't know what a boy is going to do with 72 virgins. I really don't know. I don't know. They made a poster claiming that he's one of them. The media that operates in the West and in this country decides to present him as a poor young boy who is innocent. Why did you kill him? So I called them prostitutes. That was the first time I ever used that statement. But that's exactly what they are. Cheap journalism. And they're activists rather than journalists. Holding your politicians accountable is one of the main things you can do, literally speaking. And here's one thing I want to see change. The banning of the Quds rally, the Quds march in Canada, especially in Toronto. The level of that, I've campaigned for that big time. Some politicians in the audience know I did. There's a serious level of threat that comes from this rally that happens in the last Friday of every Ramadan. You know why I say that so confidently? These imams, pay attention to this, these imams who attend the Quds march in Toronto were my classmates. Those who come out holding signs for the destruction of Jewish people were my classmates at one point. We went to class together in Iran. Today they're in Toronto, calling for my death and your death. How do we change that? We need to point the finger at those responsible and say, listen, we have allies, but we can't have this continuing. Yes, it's a democracy where they can protest. But a democracy, you see, my friends, you draw a line from dictatorship to democracy. The closer you are to democratic theory, the more of a democratic society you will be. The closest we have to a full democracy, is this bulletproof? No. The closest we have a full democracy is Canada, America, Australia, UK. But that doesn't mean that terrorists should have incorporations in the country. And lastly, allies. And I want to conclude with this. Please do not underestimate the power of your allies. You're a people with land that was taken from you, and you got it back. We're a people that fed and clothed and protected and died for a group of crooks who turned around and stabbed us in the back. The fire within us against these Hamas terrorists is no less than the fire within each and every one of you. The unity that we need to establish between our communities is so vital. The support that needs to be flowing from yours to ours and from ours to yours is so necessary. Because the single thing that threatens these extremists is that now you have Muslims. The romance between the UAE citizens and the Israelis online is something to be literally appreciated. You stare at it. You can't, really? They're saying this about us? Your home is my home? And when they get angry, they'll say, I would rather have a Jew in my home than a Palestinian. Really? It changed so fast, so quick, so clearly? Yes, we've been stabbed in the back. So do not underestimate the power of your allies, because the single threat that the extremists, the Islamists, cannot tolerate is a group of 10, 20, 50, 100 imams who will side with you in any demonstration, while on the other side, you will have a group of people with a flag for a country that doesn't exist. This friendship and this connection, this bridge building, is vital, not because it's good, but for the sake of humanity, for the greater good. This is exactly what God wants. This here, Muslims, Jews, and Christians sitting together in the house of God, this is what Abraham wants to see. This is exactly what God wants, the God of Abraham. For us to be united together in solidarity against terrorism, against extremism, fundamentalists who present themselves in liberal phobes, in liberal garbs. And that is my hope for this country and for this community and for our people and your people. And hopefully next time I see you, I see a stronger, vibrant, more united, proud community that knows how to defend itself from the extremists and the Islamists. And thank you very much for your time.
A lot of what we're seeing lately in terms of anti-Semitism in a very acute way is happening on campus. On campuses, not just in Toronto, but across North America and various other parts of the world. And some of it comes from diehard anti-Semites, but also they whom have converted to the cause. Young people who have been swayed by a lot of these arguments with which you had mentioned before. So my question to you, Imam, is what do you suggest we do or react to or try to solve the anti-Semitism that is so prevalent on campus these days?
Thank you. It's my opinion that we need to target the loudest voices. Many times the people who want to oppose anti-Semitism on campus try to avoid the people who organize it. They try to avoid the organizers. They try to pull people aside who are just passing by. And I think this is wrong. I think we need to go straight to the person who's setting up the desk and setting up the event and say, hey, listen, I want to have a conversation with you. What's your problem? Right? Something like, well, there's apartheid. And then you say, really? Come, let me show you some Muslim Brotherhood in the Knesset. You see this guy? He runs the Arab Coalition, right? Many people have different opinions about him, but hey, he's not white, right? Clearly not an apartheid. We just had a Muslim judge be appointed to the Supreme Court. You show these facts and you record it. It's very important because once you record it and you share it, then you amplify your message and your audience. I mean, if it goes viral, then it's you can't match. How many people attend a campus, one of these rallies? 100, 200, fine. When a video is seen 1 million times, you can ignore the 200 people. You focus on what percentage from the 2 million you have changed. I mean, what, 10% of people who watch it? That's a lot. Target the organizers with facts. With facts. Israel, you say, occupied Palestine? Great. Let me ask you a question. Who is the Palestinian president at the time? Right? Today we all know Russia invaded Ukraine. Right? Who's the president of Ukraine? Mr. Zelensky. We have a name. Right? Who were the army generals? We have their names. 100 years from now, I can prove it. I can tell you. These were the borders of Ukraine. This is where Russia came in from. This was the president, right? So what was the name of that poor oppressed Palestinian president who lost the country? Where were the borders? Name me a single minister. This is when they'll retreat and say, oh no, it was a Palestinian people, a region indigenous to their land. And you say, really, indigenous? Well, let's take a look at where they're indigenous from. I support the right of return. I really do. I support the Palestinian right of return to Armenia, to Turkey, right? To Italy, to Egypt. They don't belong in this land. How are we kidding? Arabs know between us and Judea, Arabia and Judea, is the Jordan River. An end of story. These Circassians and the Romans and the Qajar, right, and the Armenians, they left people behind. People lived here, decided to stay. If you're concerned about the establishment of a country here on these villages, I don't see you calling for the annihilation of Jordan because many Palestinian villages were incorporated in Jordan on the other side. How come Jordan gets to stay and the Jews need to be annihilated? Then your problem is not really with wanting a country. You don't want Jewish neighbors. That's your problem. Because I tell you one thing, if the president of Israel was Jeremy Corbyn, they wouldn't have lasted 7 decades to make peace. Their problem is Jews. End of story. There's 3 Palestines. Do you know that? Jordan is 92% Palestinian. Okay? Firstly, what is a state? A state is formed of 3 main branches. Without them, you can't have a state. 1 is the head of state. 2, economic wing, and the military. All these other ministries, Ministry of Culture, Sport, whatever, these are all not vital. You need an economy, you need a military, and a head of state. These are the 3 main pillars to establish a government. They have that in Jordan, they have that in the West Bank, and they have that in Gaza. Technically, there are 3 Palestinian states. They function as states. They have elections, they have their own economy, they get recognition from the UN, State of Palestine, right? Recognized. Some countries accept their passport. So what? Many countries don't accept their passport, but they are recognized by many people, many countries, and many of their allies as an actual legitimate state. 3 of them.
Hi, my name is Nati Pressman. I'm a campus advocate for Jewish students. So something that I've also experienced on campus, like that also David Gordon brought up, is that sometimes they don't even let us have conversations with them. When I'm a Jew and, I'm also an Israeli, when we have students on my campus who say that there's no such thing as innocent Israeli civilians. We have people on my campus who try to justify terrorism against people who are just like me and my family. Speak to them. And when I try to speak to them, I say, this is wrong. This is absolutely horrific. And I share what it's like to be a Jew and how hard it is for us because of these people who make campus an unsafe place. They don't listen. They don't even give me a chance to talk. They call me an Islamophobe when I'm simply saying that Jews and Israelis don't deserve to die. So my question is, I understand that you said that we have to try having conversations with people, but what do we do when they don't even try to let us in?
The Hamas and the Palestinian cause, because the cause is not Islamic. The cause is not Islamic. If you say it's an Islamic cause, that means all Palestinians are Muslims, and they're not all Muslims. The cause cannot be Islamic, because even if they say there's a mosque there, well, guess what? That mosque is very interesting, right? They say it involves a miracle with the Holy Prophet, but the Prophet died in 632. The mosque was built in 705, 73 years difference between the Prophet and the mosque. The mosque was built by the Umayyads. It was established by the second Caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, after the death of the Holy Prophet. And then it was established fully. The first prayer was ever held in the year 705 by the Umayyad dynasty. So what Islamophobia are you talking about? So Muslims themselves have not agreed on the location of that mosque. The Saudis believe it's in Saudi Arabia, because we have an actual scripture that says that the Prophet prayed in Al-Aqsa Mosque in the morning and prayed evening in Mecca. So literally a day's walking distance. So there are remains of Al-Aqsa Mosque in Saudi Arabia in an area called Al-Ju'arana. Al-Ju'arana, 29 kilometers away from Mecca. That existed during the time of the Holy Prophet. The one in Jerusalem did not exist during the time of the Holy Prophet. So how is it an Islamic cause when not all Muslims accept it and not all Palestinians are Muslim? So to begin with, you can never be an Islamophobe. That's nonsense. Now, here is a realistic solution. When people are calling for your death and people are holding you guilty, and you know that the university knows, the only realistic solution, in my opinion, is to sue them. That's the only, believe you me, because I speak from experience. I had a lawyer in Australia who wanted ISIS to behead me. I complained to the Law Society, complained left and right. Nothing happened. Until today. This happened in 2019, February. Not a single thing came back to me from the Law Society that shows there's a solution. And the lawyer is still practicing. So what did I do? I sued him. Big time. And in court, not only did I prove their ideology and what they stand for, I proved my truth. This is what the legal system is there for. So what you really need, in my opinion, is to support organizations that are focused on taking extremists to court. An airline doesn't want Jews to board because they have Israeli citizenship and they're not even diplomats. Sue the airline. Thank you. See, not everyone has the ability to sue a university or to file lawsuits or proceedings. They take a lot of time and money. So what do? You support organizations that are doing that for you. And I will name an organization that I believe does phenomenal work. The Lawfare Project by Brooke Goldstein, who's a Canadian. This organization is the single most important organization fighting for Jews in this respect. And that is a front that is open. The Muslim Brotherhood and these extremists, they don't believe in the laws of these countries. They believe in Sharia law, but they will use the court to shut you down if you say a single thing about them. The only way is to respond through the justice system, through the courts. And Brooke Goldstein and the Lawfare Project are phenomenal. Strongly recommend them.
I'll swing over this way, over here.
Hi, my name is Ina. I'm an Israeli living in Canada temporary. So there is no chance to see in Israel, so I needed to come here.
Miracles happen.
So I'm a huge fan. I follow you on Facebook for 5 years, I think. So I appreciate what you do.
Wow, hang on. So you followed me from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Have you seen my change? Have you seen my development?
Yes, and this is my question.
Okay.
Actually, I have a personal question. That moment in Chabad, Sydney, when you understood that you changed and you understood that your life will not be the same, was it like a creepy moment? How did you feel like that moment? Because it's like turning everything you knew to other life. So can you describe how, did you sleep that night?
Okay, so it's one thing that I don't like to get into a lot, but now that you've asked me, I'm going to answer you. But willingly, I would never go into it. I knew that it was going to be very expensive. I knew it was going to be it's going to be a long and lonely process. And I knew I was going to be alone. I knew I was going to lose my community. And I also knew that I will have new communities, which I do now. The Global Imams Council is the largest Sunni Shia Imams Council and the only one in the world. But at the time, I knew I was going to lose everything. I lost a wife, I lost a home, I lost family, lost a job, lost a community. You lose everything and you have to start again. But this time you start again from zero with an army of enemies against you. The thing is, it didn't all happen at once. So I had time to breathe and process and take it all in and deal with each matter on its own, case-by-case basis. But when you look back at how much sacrifice you make, you understand why many other imams don't want to make that sacrifice, right? So my reason to run for vice president of the GIC is because I knew many imams want to do what I do, and many of them agree with me, but they don't want to be in the face of it. So in the history of imams councils, a single candidate has never acquired 73% of the vote. I did for the first time. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you there are many imams who want to do what I do, who believe in what I'm doing, but don't want to pay the price. I still don't have children. And after my divorce, I was free. I left the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi's office. I became independent. So literally, I became a free bird. And with my relations with the police, with the government officials, I had a degree of protection that whoever wanted to attack me will know that they won't be able to silence me that quickly. Yes, it was horrible, but it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. And the fact that I'm standing here today and the fact that there's been no calls for me to be impeached or removed shows you there's a lot of support within the Imams Council and a lot of support for this type of work, and that it is respected. So I always give credit to the Jews, the Jewish people that helped me understand them better and correct my understanding of them that was wrong.
Side. Okay, we have a very eager questioner who's been very patient.
First of all, I would like to thank and appreciate the organizers for this very important debate or seminar. And I'm honored to know Imam Tawhidi. You're the second brave Imam I met talks this way. The first one is Ahmed Al-Qabanchi, and now it's you. I'm honored to know you. My question comes to this. As you mentioned, anti-Semitism is spread around strongly among the Arab and the Muslim world. It's very unfortunate. But don't you think this anti-Semitism mentioned in Quran itself, and also the story of Khaybar, tell us truthfully and strictly how the Muslim world become anti-Semitism? From this moment, as the president of Greater Toronto Kurdish House, I stand with Israeli people, I stand with Jewish people, and I stand with brave people like yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. Okay, so the Holy Quran, if you take a verse and you read it as face value, you can derive many things from it. And that's what the extremists do. The extremists love cherry picking. Moses is mentioned in the Quran more than the Prophet Muhammad. You'd be surprised. Really? A Jewish prophet? Yes, a Jewish prophet who came with the Torah is mentioned much more than any other prophet in the Quran. Now, why don't they say that? Why don't they mention other facts, such as the land title that God gave the Jews their land? Here is the issue with these verses in the Holy Quran. The Quran speaks in terminologies. When it says Ya Bani Israel, this is not a noun anymore, it's a terminology. So who are the Israelites? There was no social media at the time for the Quran to be revealed in one place and people in Africa would hear it. So clearly, the Jews in the region. There were 12 Jewish tribes, right? Banu Qurayza, Banu Qaynuqa, and so on. They were all within that Arabian Peninsula. So whenever there's speech of Jews or Israelis in the Quran outside the context of theology and outside the context of prophethood, prophets who were mentioned, right? Outside that context, and it's strictly about dealings and contracts with them or conflict, then it only refers to the Jews of Arabia. End of story. That's as far as the Quran is concerned, because the Quran doesn't say anything other than that. For example, the nonsense that, oh, the end of time, Muslims believe Jews will hide behind a tree and behind a rock, and the tree will say, come Muslim, kill the Jew who's behind me, blah, blah, blah. Firstly, you know what this means? This means nature is against Jews. So why were they created in the first place if the earth and the air and the trees are all against them? It just goes against the wisdom of God. This is not in the Quran. This is my point. This itself is not in the Quran. And it's mentioned even more than the verses that they bring out. Now, let's talk about, very briefly, the verses. They speak on a local context. And the conflict of Khaybar that you mentioned, firstly, it was a slaughter of Jews. It was one of the most significant events of Jewish oppression in that region. But it wasn't Islam versus Judaism. And it wasn't Muslim versus Jews. It was the tribe of Quraysh versus the Jewish tribes. It was strictly in tribal context. So here is what exactly happened. The tribe of Quraysh, which belonged to the Prophet is a member of this tribe. He wasn't the patriarch, a member of the tribe. These tribes have allies. The allies can be Muslims and non-Muslims. And the tribe itself can have Muslims and non-Muslims. It's completely fine. They're united by blood. When these tribes ally themselves with other tribes, then they take on their friends and their enemies, because tribes have friends and enemies. The Muslims were part of a tribe, Quraysh and so on, that was at war with a particular tribe that the Jews allied themselves with. So they automatically became enemies of the Arab tribes that had Muslims in them. You see, it wasn't Islam against Judaism and it wasn't Muslims against Jews at all. It was tribes versus tribes. These tribes had Muslims in them, that tribe had Jews in it. So that doesn't tell me as a Muslim to fight a Jew. That was an event in the development of Islam. It happened, it should be condemned, right? And any calls for Jewish killing should be condemned and fought in a very fierce manner. But the way the extremists promote it show you their lack of knowledge. When they say Khaybar ya Yahud, the army of Muhammad will return, there was never an army of Muhammad in that conflict. It was the tribes that were fighting, and Muhammad never had an army. Guess what? The Prophet Muhammad never had an army. The Muslims, up until Medina, Islam was revealed in Mecca. Up until Medina, there were 313 Muslims in all of their battles. Guess what? They were the same citizens and they were the same fighters. Whenever conflict would happen, they'd be summoned, and the same men who are Muslim, adherents of the religion, would jump on horses and fight. It was the army, it was the society. There was never an actual literal army during the time of, it was the same Muslims, and all of them went to war, and some of them came back, some of them didn't come back. And the context of war in our halakha, our jurisprudence, in our fiqh, is to always be defensive. You can never be offensive at all. At all. So the way Hamas justifies it is that, well, we're still defending. It's still defensive. They started in 1948, and these guys are so backward, they think they can always be in a defensive state up until the end of time. That's not Islamic law. That's Hamas law. That's why they're not an Islamic sect. They're not an Islamic school of thought. They're an Islamist political organization. They're a militia. And when they're a militia and an organization, they have the right, well, they don't have the right, but what they do is they find themselves able to drop their own policies and their own constitutions and brainwash the other vulnerable Muslims. Muslim clergy and jurists don't accept such nonsense at all. Oh,
Good evening. My name is Sargon David, and I'm privileged to be here, and want to thank you for coming. Not a question, but just an acknowledgement. Thank you for what you're doing for anti-Semitism, the education, the importance of this topic, especially as we've been discussing in a Western context in North America. I want to thank you as a member of the Assyrian Christian community. My parents are from Iraq, and you're from Iraq as well. I want to thank you for your help to the Iraqi Christian Relief Council, specifically after ISIS invaded Iraq and caused so much damage to Assyrians, Yazidis, and other groups that they hate. I want to acknowledge that, and I'm so thankful that you've been invited by this synagogue, by the organization that's come here, and that we're in this beautiful sanctuary. So I just very quickly, I want to say, I just came back from Iraq for the first time. I went for the Assyrian New Year, and I had a nice experience where I went to Al-Qush, which is a historic Assyrian town, and they have the synagogue and the Jewish area of the prophet Nahum, who we believe died in what is today called Iraq. And my people take care of the Jewish sanctuary there as a biblical prophet. They, of course, respect and revere him. Could you perhaps very briefly tell us how you were able to combat some of this specific ISIS theology or philosophy that caused so much damage to the Iraqi fabric? Thank you.
okay. I guess when you mean combat ISIS ideology, meaning the outside, I was never ISIS. So firstly, political Islam is totally different from Islam as a religion. Islam as a religion views the Holy Quran as a book that was revealed to guide. Islamists, the political Muslims, believe that it is a book suitable to govern and rule with, right? So there are two very important distinctions we need to make. The Quran for us is a book to guide. For them, it's a book to rule and govern with by the sword, if need be. For us, we have many laws that prevent many things and allow many things. One of them is that you cannot initiate conflict at all. There are holy sacred months in which conflict can never occur in. You look at Hamas and ISIS and the lot, and they fight in Ramadan, in the holiest month, right? This is a violation of Islamic law. It shows you they're not Muslim, they're Islamists. An Islamist will take a verse from the Holy Quran and utilize it in their own way. And they always keep a distance away from us because we know the true meanings of these verses. We know exactly how to maneuver around them and around their narrative. Very easy for us. Look, here is exactly what it feels like, okay? You know the BHI, the Black Hebrew Israelites? It's like that. When they come and they talk to Jews, they like to run away from the rabbis. They want the Jews to believe they're Jewish. They're not really Jews, right? And they come with this nonsense. The moment there's a rabbi in the room, they run. Why? Because you know how they've taken the Bible and they've twisted it in order to set their own narrative. That's exactly how we feel when we deal with Islamists. They take the verse and they don't even know how to recite it. Here's the thing. How many people in ISIS are from Chechnya, Bosnia, right? And many other, Somalia, many from Africa, India, Pakistan. These people struggle to recite the Quran. Like an Islamist, for example, like Ilhan Omar, for example, just as an example. I would dye my beard pink if she can read a page of the Quran. I dare them. Just open it and read. They don't read. You'll never hear them recite or read at all. They read the translation, but they don't know what the text actually says. And here is the problem, my brother. Extremists of all sorts, are not interested in the true meaning of what they read. They already have pre-prepared ideas, and they want what they read to fit those ideas. And it's like that with extremists in all religions and political ideologies, right? And that's basically the path that I took on, and that is by clarifying what they're doing. In Iraq, I was a co-founder of a TV station, right? And an Islamic TV station that broadcast from the Holy Seminary of Karbala. And therefore, I focused on these extremists day in, day out, from within the same country. The goal was to make sure that their claims do not find legitimacy amongst the vulnerable Muslims. Until, of course, as you know, the fatwa against ISIS issued by over 3,000 muftis, all Muslims. That destroyed their recruitment process of using religion and the Quran. So things like this, my brother, need to be tackled ideologically. Militarily, they've been destroyed, but their ideology still remains, but it's not as strong as it was before. You will always have enemies of Israel, you'll always have enemies of the Jewish people, and they'll always be powerful. They will never be weaklings, okay? They'll always be powerful. And that just shows how strong you are, right? In my opinion, is to just continue. You win by not stopping. You win by not stopping. For the majority of human history, up until the establishment of the modern state of Israel, there was never a government dedicated to protecting Jews. Jews were being assassinated and massacred left, right, center, everywhere they went. Secondly, Jewish people have a lot within their laws, within your laws. You have a lot of emphasis on life. And even when you defend, you make sure you only eliminate the threat, nothing more. Okay? This is very important. The very fact that the IDF has to call a building owner in Gaza, tell them to empty a building just so they don't take out any lives, and just that building alone says a lot about the Jewish people. You throw a rocket at Saudi Arabia, see if they give you a call. You know what I mean? So the fact that in your defense, you're very limited legally. Then there's another issue that Jews do not proselytize. You don't invite people. You don't recruit people to Judaism. And even if someone wants to become a Jew, they have to go, I don't know, I don't want to say to hell and back because they're going to go to heaven, but it's very difficult. Very difficult. In Islam, if you want to become a Muslim, you just say 2 words, end of story. Seriously, like it's 2 phrases, 1 sentence. And that's it. You become a full practicing Muslim. All of these factors together, and plus you had the Holocaust and things like that. One would think if you put all these factors together, it is a miracle really that Jewish people still exist. It's really a miracle. You know why? Because many religions disappeared because of at least one of these factors. The fact that it didn't recruit and proselytize enough. Or the fact that a government wanted them gone. Right? Or the fact that there was no one to protect them. For much of human history, the Jewish people have been victorious because of God's will. Now, with this context, you think these idiots here in Toronto are going to stop the Jewish people? Really? People much powerful than them, right? People like Hitler couldn't stop the Jewish people or stop the establishment of the state of Israel, right? They couldn't stop it. The Nazis collaborated with the Islamists in Jerusalem and their crooked mufti at the time, and they couldn't stop anything. My belief is that if you look at these people with this lens, that, you know what, they're trying to stop us. Cute. They're not going to stop us. Believe me, you have nothing to worry about.